When the instruction of the gods ceased or diminished, Jane shows how it diminishes over time, like a sort of a radio frequency where, it's coming through loud and clear, but suddenly, as it started to fade, man got desperate. Because once upon a time, we became pathologically leaning on the instruction of other people, not just gods, not just oracles, not just wise people and sages. Whereas we have a monkey mind now where those thoughts are as disturbing as they are. In the pre-bicameral age, they were not disturbing. Well, it's just as mysterious as that. You hear voices in your head today, it's called thoughts. So what's so bizarre about, the pre-bicameral period when those were louder and they were more instructive in ways that also spoke of catastrophism, shit. Yet there is a kind of a communicativeness there, isn't there? It's in the midwell. So while we're enclosed in this prison of the midwell, words become then very, very important. It's the main reason we have consciousness. It's the main reason we know things. It's the main reason we change the world. So what has happened in our culture, what's happened in our parenting, you see, that's caused all of these people to be completely broken down. Now we know what it is. I mean, almost don't need to state it. It's their poor upbringing, it's their poor parenting that has so played havoc with their sense of intentionality and empathy that they are now not only just hanging on words like it would be a normative type of thing to do, they are absolutely drenched. They're absolutely, obsessed is the only word one can use in the English language, on the words, because it's in the words that they're trying to suck the empathy. Do you see how this connects? A psychological obsession with the words of other people. So all of our instruction, all of what we consider consciousness is built out of words. What do we know about those words? Now we have just raw, primitive, emotive, obsessive connectivity to the words of others, because in the hope that we'll bond with Big Daddy, or Big Mummy, whatever it is. They're there because, again, empathy from the child to the mother, that some of the things that we missed on the semiotic level will come back to us. Hence all the screeching and yelling, hence the women domination. They've worked on the fact that man is obsessed with guidance from others and from the words of others. That's how I broke it down. And by God, they're back. And so my warning has gone out that, hey, be very careful now. It pertains to our times right now. The instruction of the UN, the instruction of your local government. A lot of people go, thank you, government, hail! You've come in at a time of extraordinary, phantom bugs and diseases. I know they're there and you're saving us. Not for your spiritual uplift or even your material uplift. It's fucking communist lies behind it. But the Tavistock and the fucking Frankfurt School have rethought, they learned as they went. And when somebody came along and said they're missing empathy, and let me prove that thesis to you, they went, that's it. The golden bullet, the silver bullet. And so on the semiotic level, distract the female, distract the mother. There's no empathy there. Then the society, the schooling, the peers, right? The empathy is denuded. It's done in many other subliminal ways, I might add, through TV and what have you. But in general, just speaking shortly, by the time you reach the age of puberty, you are not an empathic being. You've been raped of it. Sometimes much earlier, sometimes a little later. came. So it's really not that complicated. Word creates image, creates emotion. One of their agendas is to urbanize man. It's a patropek, what we're talking about, meaning that you can no longer be seduced by, the Saromans, or worse, because there's worse up the ladder even than that. But with this kind of knowledge understood, which is a vital part of what we're doing here, you can now be really on guard for it. And also you can see how other people are immediately entrained, how they are hypnotized. All of this thing is a very feminized sort of lure, actually, what's going on. Some by the words of a religious person, others by the political. But now you understand the power of the image and the power of the emotive level to it. That became so fluid to us that finally at the bicameral period, the left brain set itself up. And the kind of empathy we know consciously is only a small tip of the iceberg. Empathy is the main structure of consciousness, which comes out of feeling and reevaluating how you feel second by second, moment by moment. Even the empathy had to be simulated. It's a simulacrum. But even this fantastic demonic simulator, this real Satan in your head, even had the ability to simulate. I mean, this is a photocopier like no other, right? It simulated empathy. And then come along a priest class that said, you're doing it wrong. You need us to tell you what to do. And we were so susceptible, so impotent, that we decided to listen to what these guys had to say. And of course, that's going on to this day. The advent of religion, he says, came about because we then had to trust something or someone, by which they're constantly tugging on your heartstrings. These people are deeply involved in all the charities and all that, right? And the inevitable collapse that follows their presence, because they're highly feminized. Masculine women, no problem, we wouldn't be talking about this. But we don't have that. Why they're so histrionic and so needy about it all is because on some level, they don't feel a strong empathic connection with the world. They know you haven't got the empathy because that was turned off by parents or society. See, one thing about the midwelt, and I mentioned this in the article, is that society stops you being empathic. You have an innocence. You already have an innocence when you're a child, right? That gives you a very empathic connection to all, right? The eigenwelt, the midwelt, and the inwelt. That slowly gets shut down. It's a crowd phenomenon in this utopian state. And no, your empathy dies the more and more you meet fucking human beings. They know what Ayn Rand was trying to warn, that we don't have the same values. We live in these high rises, we live in these packed cities. Right? It's all superficial. That's not real empathy. Deep down inside, people don't have values. And in fact, deep down inside, people have a great rage and hatred for one another, right? So they understood all of this kind of thing. And then they moved in with their disciples to exploit it. And that's why we get this whole craving, for the words. The hidden thinkers, the real Masonic high guys, have discovered that empathy is crushed by society. If you keep going to the midwelt, which is what they hope that you're going to do, empathy decreases. That's the equation. The very fact that we're living in these metropolis, the one who's had the empathy drained out of their system now will be absolutely obsessively attached to the words of others. And that's been used and taken to religious heights. Because you don't know anything about the history of thought or the history of words. Who haven't a clue about basic psychology, empathy is killed off by the midwelt. And empathy being, as I said, non-conscious, intentionality is so deeply needed. It's something that's basal. You can't, it's ontological. There's no conscious mechanisms, right, that have any say over it at all. They're below, you have those upper states of conscious awareness because that stuff's meant to lie below. So if any attack can be directed, that's your fucking Saurons. That's it. That's what brings civilizations down. There's no greater romantic power. There's no greater magical ritual than to work on that. So when the stabilizers are pulled away, right, from a mountain climber, he has to grab on to the first shaky root to save himself plummeting to his death. That is the word. You're clinging to the words of deceivers. And then later on, cultivate the empathy that you're missing so that you will not be the mannequin, the puppet on the string that they hope for. The way that the wordsmithery was so much more deep. You may see the great peak of it in AD, but obviously anything sophisticated has to have antecedent roots. So what you need to realize is that no, the roots of this sophistication is millennia old. Just like it is with even physical ruins and physical architecture. But when it comes back to words, remember that we are now all hanging on those words because of the loss of the ancestral connectivity. Call that ancestral voices. That got lost, leading them, as we delineated, to an overemphasis on the words of teacher, the words of professor such and such. All of these buggers knowing it at some point what they're doing. Then you find out what a victim you are. You're not even dealing with reality, you're dealing with a simulacra of reality, which the words substantiate. The cement of that simulacron world, but the world of the false, the world of the left brain is words. That's the putty and the concrete that holds it together. So it's a very mighty thing. When a child grows up and goes to school and meets other people, their empathy is not strengthened. It's waned. For most people, your empathy with people, it's crushed because you have to meet all these tykes and oiks, right? Who are pulling your pigtails and, you know, and making a mess of you, right? And demeaning you. Somebody's cuter, somebody's better, somebody's teacher's pet. Empathy is on the wane. It shrinks by being thrust out. And then when you go to the place of work, when you enter into the hierarchy, there's always people above you. There's always people who've got more. There's always people who've got more by less deserving it. You know, so you're boiling with rage. How come they got it and I didn't get it? They've passed me over 1,000 times. So the Gnostic people know this. The technology is all to get you quicker to be silver spooned. That's the efficacy of the technical world. Remember, the technology brings it to you quicker. So free stuff. They're doing a vast Gnostic ritual to say, have it, more, glut, glut, glut. Because we are the high priestesses and the high priests of Gnosticism. Ye shall come unto us naked at the end. You'll be nothing, empty. That's what our Supreme Archon wants of you. We're heading in that direction, folks. Don't you doubt it for 1 minute, so don't be fooled. And then the key thing that we talked about is then you saturate them with the stuff of the world that they want anyway. But you do it in this feminized way. It doesn't matter what debauchery they do in this instance, do you see? Because the prize is complete sacrifice of myself. They're negating selfhood. They're going through a process by which selfhood itself is being negated. You know, plunging back into the semiotic is all it really is, but the whole thing is they've just learned the techniques of auto-hypnotism. Knowing that when you stuff yourself endlessly, gorging, right? Because it's not just having it, it's gorging on it. That there will be an antithesis reaction. And they know what it is. It's the desire to push all of that stuff away. And unfortunately, you become a sannyasi. In the exact Gnostic way. You stand on the banks of the Ganges and you say, I've renounced the world. That's what they want you. I'm a sannyasi, I'm a drifter, nothing matters to me, I'm asexual, I'm frigid, I'm a monk, and I'm ringing my bell, and my eyes are closed, and I'm hanging on to the tail of the next monk, and he's got his eyes closed, and we're walking through valleys of such unimaginable beauty, and none of us see it. Because we got mantra, and I got that from some fuck up the street, some guy in an orange robe. What the fuck? What the fuck? Then you get this cult that is exploiting that, knowing that you don't have the original empathy. So get you together in huge crowds. That's lovely. It feels great, like a big ball game, right? Make sure that there's always a mega audience. The media has helped them do that. Get them all into learning the techniques of auto-hypnotism, which has always been used by Gnosticism from beginning to end. Mankind for hundreds and hundreds of years was obsessed with sacrifice and what can I do to bring the voice of the gods back? And of course, it's trial and error, isn't it? And if you sacrifice 100 souls on a ziggurat, you might actually feel for a while that the voices are back.
So, Koyaanisqatsi, are you ready to sacrifice your life to appease and honor the gods?
I am not afraid.
The gods are ready.
And they're freeing you. Their audience is being freed. So all the sex, phallic shit, debauchery, all the fucking slime of it out in your face at the Emmys, at the Super Bowl, right? If every child is taught to be sensitive to that, to realize that, you tell me then, would they be cutting down trees? You tell me now, would they be into brutalistic architecture and crushing the world and relating to the umwelt, nature, in such a way? It's just impossible. If they knew about this process philosophy, and if they knew about how each thing that they encounter is a marker along the way, or is a companion on the journey towards the absolute idea, how would that turn them into the raving maniacs and constitutional moral inferiors who surround us, or the demagogues in power? You tell me that. But there's a lot of paganistic groups that were Gnostic. When you know what real Gnosticism is. The healthy paganism is the one that says nature is all, and introduce you to the umwelt. That's very good. That's nothing wrong with that. I'm a pagan. I'm a mystical naturalist. And this will mean then spending more time with animals, spending more time in nature. There's no words. When we go out into the umwelt, we do not have any verbal communication back in a natural environment with the elements, and then slowly you'll start to develop the real empathy that is the base of consciousness. Empathy in the true sense is restored. If the saddle is on the horse, I'll use the fucking saddle. To see if the saddle can't be found, I'll ride it bareback. And that's an attitude of life, right? That I love luxuries just like the next man, but I'm not enslaved by those luxuries. And if they disappear for any reason, I am not changed in any way. My relationship with reality remains the same. But as long as you can woo them into believing that they're nothing, they're empty, they're failures, right? They're impoverished, because they are. Remember, I told you what we've already highlighted in this talk, where the impoverishment is. It's not in words. It's not in left brain structures. It's in empathy. When you listen overly and in this extremely compulsive way to the guidance of others, even though that may help you at that moment to get over a crisis, over time, I can no longer hear myself. I've deafened to the sound of my own voice. This Gnostic cult, the cult of evil, is actually in our midst. It's back. I would rather you became obsessive of the words of a Manly Palmer Hall or a Khalil Gibran, right? It's not that you shouldn't be obsessive, listening to the words, but for goodness sake, make it an Alan Watts, make it a Krishnamurti. There's plenty of people to be obsessed with words. It's going to be a lot better for you since we are obsessed with people's words. Well, the first step is to become obsessed by the words of better people. That's not that hard. Because I realized that what they're trying to do is glut you with the stuff of the world, so that in some bizarre mega aversion therapy, they're going to have you be the man on the silver mountain, empty.
I believe that the world is mysteria haunted, which I describe as a mysterium. That's a singular word meaning mystery, mysteria meaning the plural of that. It's a philosophical concept. In the academic world, and you have the disciples of the mysterium being brought to the fore. A lot of the collectivism that you see, my theories of the mysterium, are a foundation of that. They explain why this collectivism comes about. But many classes of people in the world are probably not even incapable of working this out because their thinking is not of this. They're entirely mysterium possessed, mysterium haunted.
This is what it is, okay? I said empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
So those people who are not going to get any of this and do any of this homework, don't get in the way. Because life is the better teacher than you could ever be.
The Christian movement has worked so heavily on causing fragmentation within your own self, between you and your body. There's another quote from an Augustinian priest in Poland. He said, "Follow our Lord's example and hate your body. If you love it, strive to lose it," says the Holy Scripture, in order to save it. If you wish to make peace with it, always go armed. Always wage war against it. Treat it like a slave, or soon you yourself will be its unhappy slave. Look at the kind of psychotic mind that would imagine that your body is your slave, is your enemy. And a person who embodies that becomes a despot. They're already a despot, meaning a tyrant within themselves. We're at the point now where we can be grown up enough to accept that and look for something, a different way. Not a religion of, another herd, a collectivized thing, but a truly free situation.
Yeah.
Because the armored type prefers to live in an armored environment, which he calls community and all the rest of it. We've discovered that there's a social armory. And he's got to keep the window dressing up to make it look like it's just perfect, like they do in the village. In the extreme form, it entails the death of selfhood. In the extreme form, it brings about a fucking PC world, right? Where everything is offensive to this subject. There is the idea that this world is imperfect, it needs to be organized. So I've got my job laid out for me. I've got a ready-made vocation. Put on that white collar, I'm the priest. I'll take care of this. I'm the engineer, I'm the politician, I'm the big pharma, I'm the medic, and all the rest of it. I've got the authoritarian type and the authoritarian structure to lean up against. And according to McDonald, he rightly claims that these people have done more damage to the world in the name of goodness than any Jews. Or it makes anything like a Jewish conspiracy literally almost fade to zero when you realize what these white Western Christians in the name of goodness and equality have done to our world. They start off as reformers, and what they've done is very cunning. They have, because of their Gnostic view that all races and peoples are equal. See, today we have no clue, right? That everything that's happening today has its precedent in the past, in many instances of the past. So in the name of the Christian God, in the name of some boogaloo idea about equality, written in one of the worst texts ever written in the world to use as a manual for anything, and so they appear humanitarian, although you look like reformers, do-gooders, godly, goodly men on the surface. And then it's Gnostic. only such a creature would walk around with his big giant Bible under his arm and his attitude, because he's thinking of the world as a sick, fallen, dirty place. The true agenda, the we, the us, and the our, is born out of an armored type. You, brother, watch for Satan's mark on you. See, Satan is closer than you think, brother. Come to God, be free. So these liberal do-gooders go out there, and what they do then is they bring in the panopticanization, and they work it to death. And as I said, they've changed the whole history of America. It's happening right now, what they set in motion. The whole of America's history has been dominated and changed by the actions of these people, these reformers. To feel sanctimonious and holier than thou. But the Thomas Saz is saying, no, but it brought in a kind of enslavement. And Kevin McDonald's latest book is one of the fucking masterpieces on this subject. Individualism in the Western liberal tradition. Go to listen to the podcast about it. I think it's called the Feminization of America podcast. So the idea of the armored type and why he gets involved in all this social reform is because his underthought is that he wants to panopticanize the world. And they even did it physically. They not only panopticanized the world, they built panopticons in prisons and in schools. And in Bedlam, the madhouses. The whole history of the Western world. That's the real conspiracy, folks. Well, when you see that the city that we've built is a consequence of the armoring thing, the emotional plague within yourself. That's why you got your skyscrapers. That's why you got your brutalistic architecture. That's why you got the concrete and steel. That's why you've got these ugly colleges and schools and the way kids are told to sit in their locker rooms and all the rest of it. That's why you've got your abusive nature, the whole nightmare list. It's what we call institutionalization. Right? You don't want to leave it. There's no question of leaving. If you're a member of this institution, then there comes a period where you need a kind of an exorcism on a mass level. The engineers, the boss hogs, allow a certain period where people can run hysterical. And therefore, the powers that be sanction mass hysteria. Because without it, you wouldn't have city life as we know it. Which breeds institutionalization. Actually, Foucault called it total institution. I'll put that, there's actually, look it up, total institution. Lovely. And a search through history shows us that this mass hysteria is not an exception. It's actually the rule. For people who really have only a pretense of leaving the system, only a pretense of getting well, and that even the syndromes, right, that's the causes that the socialists have, is manufactured so I can stay within the prison and have the leader and be patted on the head and have the bowl of soup and the gruel. It's the antics of an institutionalized person. That in order to stay within the collective as an entity, he's always looking for new causes. And just because a Marx and an Engels or a Gramsci or whoever, right, or a Marcuse quickly script something for you to run with, like feminism, multiculturalism, or whatever it might be, what the hell? Or slaughter all white men, white, male and pale, gotta go. And they just love it when you're running off looking for Jews under the bed. And that's just now running riot. It's collectivistic, it amplifies lunatic ideas, it gives me a sense of approval, but it also allows me to believe that I'm an individual. And it also means that I remain, right, I'm strengthening the walls of my incarceration by this. Because as I said, it's a kind of malingering in which you, as a subject, which is already a pseudo-self, create pseudo-causes endlessly ad infinitum. Socialism it's called, in short. An enslavement of selfhood second to none. And all I can say about 2020 is you've got a fucking front row seat to prove everything we've been saying here. And so we have to be drugged. Right? That voice to be silenced, then you need a mediator. All born from this fact that you're highly armored, and then that highly armored person with the will to power, let's not forget that, joins together with others in the similar state, mode, and you go and create the city. You create the Mitwelt, which is armored, inorganic. It's there to find a way out from listening to the voice of the authentic self, so that you can even be more embedded and acculturated and thinned out. So the inability to look at the parental situation, the inability to even deal with your own authentic selfhood when its voice arises within you, all of these things, the compulsive commitment to the crowd, which gives you that false sense of belonging and what have you, it's all not good. It's all leading to a particular dystopian future. In more plain language, what this means is that there's a rebel within. The solution, of course, is to get back in touch with the somatic intelligence, to sanitize and sensitize yourself, to listen to its voice and its guidance. So things that are millions of years in the making. The id, he means the unconscious, right? And that means the somatic intelligence. We are denying. We're cutting ourselves off the root. So when we earlier said, is something being sacrificed? Yes, now we know what it is.
Because to me, freedom and love are two words for the same thing. And where you do not see freedom, you do not have love. Make that 100% granite. Where there is no freedom, there is no love. So stop deluding yourself. Now, people may love what freedom gets them, but they may not love freedom. I said that freedom from freedom is not freedom. So what we have today, Henrik, in the world is many, many people who really do want to be free. Only trouble is they want to be free from freedom. And Big Brother, he's happy to hear that. Because he's dressing up and is making phone calls and he's going, get with it, guys. They want to be free from freedom. You know, so they're up 24 hours, typing away, making their new world order. You know, they're busy. They can't wait to bring you what you want. So when I see the slave-master relationship, I am fascinated by the actions of the master, but I am infinitely more interested in the slave. What's your gig? What's wrong with you? That you have imprisoned your own mind. Nothing great enters the life of mortals without a curse.
That is a mighty big nasty pill to swallow. But swallow it, you most certainly motherfucking will. You should know, there is no door number fucking 4. This is it. This is the only way. You're a badass. You're not scared of shit. Don't be scared of me. It's a disappointment. Well, pardon me, young man, and excuse the shit out of my goddamn French, but did you just threaten me? Welcome to a brand new beginning, you sorry shits.